Welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast, you guys. 620. We are moving on in life. We are just stacking up wins, I hope. My guest today is a repeat offender, I would say. Blag Dahlia, you know him from the Dwarves, and he's been on a couple times. We got him back. The mouse in my pocket, got him back. New album is called Jenkem. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about probably a bunch of things. So let's figure it out. I'm going to call him right now. So let's do that. I've got my phone recording me. I've got the audio. I think we're in business.
On the street, they called him Mike Herrera.
That's right. But in the sheets, what do they call him? I don't know. Let's not talk about that.
They call him MX P Diddy.
P Diddy. Get the baby oil. Let's go.
MX P Diddy. That's got to be your next album.
Oh my God. Unfortunately or fortunately, we already have the name of our new album coming out, Living in the Chaos.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's almost as good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, dude. So, I mean, we're here to talk about you. We're here to talk about what you've been up to. You've been up to some stuff. So what's Jenkem? New record. Last time you were on, we were talking about the concept album.
That's right.
But now we're talking about Jenkem.
Jenkem is,
okay, that's it.
Basically it's a cheap inhalant that they do in like Africa and South America, and basically like really poor kids will like shit into a bucket and cover it, and then they kind of snort the methane that rises to the top of it. Nice. I've never tried it myself, but it just sounded like such a commitment to getting high. I thought it deserved the Dwarves seal of approval.
I think that fits. Almost as good as MXP Diddy.
MXP Diddy. Dude, I'm telling you, you're going all the way. With baby oil.
With baby oil, that's right. Blag Dahlia, everyone, you know him from the Dwarves, the front man, the big swinging dick. Get your children out of the room for this one. I don't know what's going to happen.
Man, it has been such a brutal summer. We did a month in Europe, which is brutal anytime, but it was so hot, Mike. It was the worst heat wave in European history. And there we were day after day, just baking in the sun, man. You got to play those outdoor things where you're just, I mean, it was so brutal. So I've been home now for 4 or 5 days and just, eating, sleeping, and fucking. It's all that matters.
That's what else is there? Oh, and
crying.
And crying. A lot of crying and complaining. Yeah, dude. I mean, I think I caught the beginning of that heat wave. I was there for Slam Dunk Festival in the UK, and it just hit the heat, and you're on the train just sweating. You're like, what is happening? Why? How did I get in the window seat? And I just remember those summers, and it seems to be getting, when it's bad, it's bad. Right? That's just the way it is.
But fortunately, we know from our current administration that this whole global warming thing is just a hoax.
It goes up and down. I mean, yesterday it was so hot here in Washington, and then today, and then it started raining. So I was like, okay, are we on planet? Yeah.
It proves it's all a hoax, right?
It was Dune, and I don't know what it proves. I don't believe anything anymore.
That's what they've succeeded in doing.
Exactly.
Sowing doubt about everything.
Yeah.
I spent this tour arguing with my bass player about things like whether the world is round
or flat.
Yeah.
So what
shit that we think has been settled for 3,000 years.
Are you saying the bass player thinks the Earth is flat?
Well, he won't commit to it's round, and it has something to do with how the moon landing was faked, and so the photographs they took from outer space don't prove anything. And I said, yeah, but dude, mathematicians proved that the world was round like 3,000 years ago just by sticking sticks in the ground and measuring the shadows. But apparently that's a little too square a piece of knowledge to have.
Right.
So you can only get real information now from tattooed guys on the internet. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they're the ones who know everything, and they know that the Earth is not round. You know, and these tattoos and prove it. You know.
I know. I've seen videos, and I'm just like, oh my God, what if the Earth actually is flat? Like, no, I don't think it's flat. I think it's. We've been all over the world. Don't you think we would have seen something? I mean,
I think we would have fallen off the edge.
Yeah.
Round. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think so. What about the moon landing? That's a whole different thing.
You know, I'm not a science expert, okay? So, like, I don't know things, but I guess I'm a sucker in that sense. Like, you know, I trust antibiotics, and I trust, you know, the people who tell me that we've been to the moon. And I suppose maybe I'm just a sucker and I don't understand anything and I'm just a clown. But, you know, I'm pretty comfortable with the whole Earth is round. We've been to the moon. Vaccines work. You know, I wouldn't describe myself, Mike, as like a real establishment guy that like swallows everything that gets thrown at me.
Sure.
But I think if we can't agree on some of the more basic things, you know, if 2 + 2 is something different than 4 for you, then I find that really difficult. It's like we can't really have any point of agreement. You know,
Sure.
We can't agree on the simplest things.
Okay, I can accept that, but maybe not all those points exactly, but I can accept that, yes, we need to agree on some things. I'm kind of the guy that's like, I'm not saying everything's wrong, but it's been corrupted in such a way that when, for instance, cars, you know, a car started out just a machine, you get in it, you drive it. Now it's a way to track you. And if you have a certain year of car, it has to have tracking devices. It has to have a kill switch, has to have all these things that, you know, just take more and more of your freedom away. So like me, I'm not saying we didn't go to the moon, but I think it didn't happen exactly the way that they tell us because they're always lying to us about everything. So there's some truth to things, and then they just get over time, oh, let's use this, So yeah, that's maybe a boneheaded thing to say, and it's very vague in a lot of ways. But
I mean, it's natural because we're all in this position, especially, you know, we're musicians. We can barely add and subtract. So, you know, and so it's like we don't know the science, the hard science behind these things. So we just have to accept this kind of accepted wisdom, right? But the problem that I have is that the people that this really works for are the Putins of the world, right? The Xi Jinpings of the world, all the people who don't believe in democracy. Because if you don't believe in democracy and you can just always sow doubts about it, you know, this idea of just sowing doubt about everything, you know, gravity doesn't work and the earth isn't round and all these things, then it makes it real easy to be like, yeah, you know, all that bullshit about America being free and you having rights. Well, that's all bullshit too. Everything's the same. Everybody's corrupt. Everybody's trying to screw you over. So the authoritarians really love this conspiracy theory ideas, whatever they're about, because they always come back to, you can't trust anything, you can't believe anything, and so you might as well believe me. You know what I mean?
What are some conspiracy theories that have actually ended up being true? Because there are some.
The whole thing with COVID where they were saying, and you know, and this is a great example of the failures of the left wing, right? Because they were saying, well, you know, there's a in Wuhan, China, where this originated, there is in fact a lab. And so it's very possible that there was a lab leak and people said, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. Couldn't possibly be true. It had to have originated in the wet market. And then it turned out, no, it's much more likely that it actually came from the lab. So this is an example, like
right.
I think there were a lot of people that were nervous about that thought it would cause racism toward Chinese people if we said this virus came from China, even. You know
sure,
what I mean?
sure.
So
it was politicized instantly.
Right. So the PC stuff kind of gets in your way too. It makes it impossible to think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really pisses people off when they're told something opposite of what's obviously true in front of their faces, right. and oh, no, it was we've never done gain of function, whatever labs over in China, like lying about that stuff constantly, right. And then you find out it's true, and then little things like like them just like making up, randomly making up 6 inches or 6 feet, to separate people, like that right. kind of thing. Like they're just making up things. Like let's just make right. up some things to like feel like so that the population can feel like we're doing some proactivity, right? Like sometimes it's just look busy, right?
I think you're right. The problem is what happens when there's another one of these, but it's like Ebola.
And it's really actually dangerous?
Everybody is going to die. Everybody's going to go, oh, I went through this bullshit. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not distancing. Oh, fuck it. And then just boom, boom.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to drop dead.
And that would also, I think, be the blame of the government, because the government's the one that messed up their message to the people over and over these years. Like, from JFK to all these different assassinations, and you can't get a straight answer. And it's like, what is happening here? And yeah, I mean, we could go on and on about all the different things that, the government.
I mean, it's our lives have become so complex that they're not understandable as one big complete unit. Like the days of like a Renaissance person that could sort of understand the world as it was known in its totality are long gone, right? So now we only understand fragments of things, and that makes us feel very unmoored from reality. Like we're not getting the whole picture. Somebody's keeping it from us. But my question about conspiracies is always, well, who kept the secret? Like if we didn't go to the moon and it was all just a big lie, all those people just kept that secret together and everybody just tick a lock and nobody said anything, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't think so, What about the Challenger space mission conspiracy theory?
What's that one? Well, so I was in elementary school and the Challenger was a space shuttle that went up and then it blew up in the air, and it was on live TV. And the conspiracy is all of those people never were in there. It was all a stunt. And they've found those people in real life now. And they're just like their name's slightly different. And they're just like, I guess this could be a really just crazy coincidence, but it is wild how uncanny that this person looks exactly like that person. Right. And they have something to do with space technology. They work in the space division or some sort of thing, or, it's just a weird one out there. But like, it doesn't help or hurt me to like believe that that's real. So I more just kind of like chuckle or just go, whoa, that's crazy if that's true. And then I move on with my day. It's just crazy being in the van and hearing this stuff, because it's like, on the one hand, I'm fascinated by it and I think it's hilarious. On the other hand, I start to become like and I'm not saying anything, Mike. I'm just standing there. I'm just listening. But after a while, they'll get so worked up. Like I start to represent like all the suckers that believe and all this. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'll be saying, it's like suddenly I'm like the COVID vaccine guy, or I'm the space traveler guy, or I'm whatever. And it's like, I don't know anything that you don't know, man. I just don't believe in conspiracy. You're a normie. Like, you're a normie. Yeah. Yeah, I would say I'm less of a normie than you are, which is kind of crazy to say. In some ways.
Yeah, I think it's true.
That's great. But I am a bass player, so you have to like chalk that down as one of the reasons.
That just means you wanted to get in a band fast and you couldn't play guitar.
Right. Yes, that's true. That's true. I got suckered into it. Hey, we all do. Anyway, for the record, I actually chose bass because I was a fan of Sting. And so I was like, Sting sings and plays bass. And I was impressed by what he was doing. I was like, okay. And then I got into punk, right after that.
The fact that you can admit that is big, Mike.
Well, I'm talking the Police, like my parents, I was a product of like what my parents were listening to at the time. And part of that was like the Police.
And they were listening to the Police?
Yeah.
Wow. See, my dad was listening to like Guys and Dolls and the Music Man and stuff.
That explains a lot, actually.
No rock and roll in our home. Nobody was interested in it. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I got into Huey Lewis because my mom was a fan of Huey Lewis, and that really is why I probably started singing. Same with Bryan Adams. Those two artists.
Bryan Adams. Yeah, the Reckless album. Do you remember a great movie from many years ago called American Psycho?
Absolutely.
Do you remember how, like, when he's getting ready to murder people, he starts talking about songs like a music critic?
Yes.
And he's like, Huey Lewis in the news. He's got like a mallet in his hand. He's going to kill the guy with it. It's like, Huey Lewis in the news. I didn't like their earlier new wave songs, but Sports, that was a classic.
Oh my God, it's so good. I was like, that tracks actually. But I like
one of the most brilliant movies ever.
Yeah, I love that movie
for my money.
And I do love the early Huey Lewis stuff, all the way up until I guess Great New World. I didn't get into Big New World, Great New World, something like that. I didn't get into it as much, but by then I was already on my way and moved on, and I was fully immersed in punk music and doing my own shit. And but hey, Huey Lewis, man, that guy.
Not like punk?
No, they like punk. Yeah, they love punk. But they weren't into punk back then. Like I kind of got them into punk. But my interest in music kind of got them into like, let's find something, and they introed me to the Violent Femmes, and
great band,
which really the bass lines, like I was just like, yeah, I love this instrument. It's just so beautiful the way he weaves those bass lines.
Great bass player in that band,
Brian Ritchie. Yeah. And then another big influence early on was Stray Cats. My parents gave me a Stray Cats cassette. So there was some early on punk adjacent stuff that I got into. Right. And then from there, once I started discovering on my own or through other siblings or my cousin or friends, all the bands like Black Flag.
Stray Cats are great. It's just that sort of started the clean rockabilly movement.
They were the Green Day of
kind of where rockabilly has been stuck ever since. And like one of the coolest things about rockabilly is like the kind of shit that Cramps covered, that was like these dirty rockabilly records.
Yeah, true.
Love Me by the Phantom or She Said by Hassel Atkins. And these rockabilly just kind of became like, I started calling those guys potsies, they all kind of dressed like Happy Days and their hair was perfect. And they did, it was like, hey,
yeah,
everything was real clean and perfect after the Stray Cats,
Yeah,
although they were great, I thought, but it was a very clean form of rockabilly.
Absolutely. I agree. It was mainstream. It was like they were the biggest rockabilly band. Like, which is why I kind of call them the Green Day of rockabilly. And I love Green Day. I mean, I'm a huge fan of them too, but they have an image, and that was a thing, and same with Green Day. Green Day sort of grew into their newer, squeakier, clean image as far as like the stage look with the suits and or whatever. But
I think too with Green Day, it's interesting because they always catch a lot of flack in terms of like, oh, those are the guys that ruined punk or something. And I never really heard it that way. I thought they had a pretty consistent style from the beginning, and it's very kind of, and the guy is just a very catchy songwriter, which I don't think you can take away from that group. It's just. I think it's kind of what it represents. And a lot of it just has to do with physical looks. I mean, I used to make this argument about Kurt Cobain, too. It's like being cute and blonde and young comes first, and then comes all the misery, you know what I mean? And Green Day was kind of the same thing, It was like he was cute and blonde and young, and it was harmless and safe for a lot of girls that wanted to be in love with him, and then it was like, oh yeah, and then there's music too.
Yeah.
Which I think like people underestimate that depending on how people market themselves. I mean, in the 80s, I couldn't fuck a girl without there being a Chris Cornell poster over her bed. Every time. And then through the 90s, then it was replaced with the Kurt Cobain poster.
Hey, at least they both have long hair, at least. So
right. And then it was something for me to look at.
Yeah, exactly.
And then in the 2000s, it became Billy Joe, now his picture was there. So a lot of the, despite all of the importance that everybody piles on these guys after the fact, it kind of starts with just they're cute, and people like it.
You got to have that recipe for success. Part of it is image, part of it is how you present yourself out there, and then of course the songs. You got to have a hit song or two.
And the Dwarves just never had any of that until about. In my late 20s, I started to be able to kind of write hit-sounding songs and produce them right. And I thought at that point, oh, wow, well, now we're going to be big too, right? Because I got a song you could play right next to Green Day or The Offspring. And it was like, no, you're not going to be, because, you've got a weird guy who's naked standing next to you with a mask on. And so, no. And you put a pair of tits on your record, so no. And you put fuck in this song title, so no, you don't get that. You know what I mean? And it was kind of like, gee, what's wrong? It took me a while to kind of figure it out. And then I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I'm just kind of stuck with who I am and what I did. You know what I mean? And once you accept that, then it's like pretty easy to have fun from then on, because there was a difficult period there from like sort of my late 20s to my late 30s when it was very like, I don't understand. I'm doing everything right. I wrote the songs right. I got them produced right. And everything sounds right. Like, what's the problem? Why can't I be a big rock star too? And then eventually you kind of realize, oh shit, this is all just something to pile the marketing on. And nobody wants to pile the marketing on me. You know what I mean? So you can come out with the greatest song in the world or the greatest record in the world or something very commercial, and still, you're not going to get anywhere with it, if your objective is to, be Billy Joe or be Kurt Cobain or be whoever these guys were, And all of those guys were very sincere, I think. I don't think any of them went to make music and said, oh, I'm going to change what I like and just do this because I'll get big this way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, of course not.
I don't believe that that's what they're about. I think Billy Joe loves Billy Joe's music, and Kurt Cobain loved Kurt Cobain's music, and Chris Cornell loved Chris Cornell's music. It's just it didn't escape my attention who got big and who didn't.
Yeah. In the early 90s, no one was thinking punk was their ticket to a career in music. It was something we all did. I mean, I was a little later than you guys, but it was still, I think, true. Something we just did because we saw other kids doing it. We were into the music. When you hear something that inspires you, you want to do that too. And that's what got us. And then now, it could still be that, but there's also that thing that's, I want to be a big rock star, or whatever. But like we didn't have, we had that maybe small delusion, but it was never this is why we're doing this band. No, we're doing this band because we're just playing music. We're just touring, and you just kind of just start doing what you do. And
yeah, and the people that I was the most into when I started a band were even more obscure than that, because I was really into like 60s garage records and like obscure rockabilly records. And so it was like, you know, people like the 13th Floor Elevators or the Chocolate Watch Band, like they'd never had a hit. And it never became big. And then it was like, well, fuck, what's around that's kind of cool? Oh, punk. So I started going to punk shows. And then you see that, and it's like, well, none of these people are big and successful. Nothing's going to happen with this. I think if you lived in the middle of Hollywood, you know, like I come from Illinois, so I didn't have any examples of that. I think if you came from Hollywood, you could have seen fairly early how, you know, like, guys were going to get rich and be famous doing punk, you know. But I think if you came from anywhere else, it would have been hard to see that.
Absolutely. And, you know, building those early building blocks, like Green Day didn't become Green Day overnight. I mean, you know, just like you don't build Rome in a day. It just takes time. It takes time, and you have to consistently stack those same things over and over and over. And we're all doing that as artists, I think. We're stacking our own whatever brick we make, right? Like we've got our own kiln in the back of the room, and we make our bricks and we stack them, you know. And some bricks, people really like those bricks. And other bricks are not so popular, you know, so it's just like, it's weird, and it doesn't mean those bricks aren't good. And that's the weird thing about life, is like, you gotta find, and nowadays it's more niche than ever. I feel like, you know, there's people with 1 million followers that you would never hear of in a million years if it wasn't for the internet, and you stumble across their video or something. And so, well,
and I think identity stuff had a lot to do with it. Like in punk, it became like, you know, we're the only left-handed ballerina punk band.
Yeah,
you
right.
know? So all the left-handed ballerinas that were looking for a band, you know, you got it now, you know, with us, which I you know, I think that made the scene generally worse, because the whole idea was supposed to be, well, no, every band is for everybody. You know, like there might be a left-handed lesbian ballerina fronting this band, but we all like it because it's good.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to like, well, no, you have to share my identity in order to like this. And so the identity to hate is the identity that's like mine. When I started my band, I was a young white guy. Now I'm an old white guy. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, old white guys are a very sort of hated general group.
Yeah.
And so we needed, you know, somebody to represent every different group to come in, you know, and I don't really think that made things better, you know?
Yeah. That brings me to the new album. I mean, you got a song called We Are the Scene. It's a good song. Your songs are so short. It's just like boom, boom. They just kick your ass and you get out. I love that.
I mean, that's well, thank you for noticing, Mike. You know, I would count on you to get it. I mean, they have the same requisite parts that any hit song has, you know, a verse, a chorus, a riff, a tagline, whatever it is, you know, just we don't repeat them as much, you know. And We Are the Scene. I mean, Dwarves records have these formulas to them, and like We Are the Scene is the classic. Like there has to be one Dwarf song that says how great the Dwarves are on every record, you know.
Yes.
And so you have to have that, you know, and whether it's like Bleed On or, you know, there's just, you know, or Let Me Show You How It's Done. You know, it's always like, we're the greatest and we're great. And now we're going to do this for you. You know, so We Are the Scene. It's
You're
like,
welcome.
Hey, it's us. We're so important. You know, we're the entire scene, you know.
That's great. I love it. I think it's good. I think the whole record just sounds great. And it sounds powerful, which I feel like is not every record these days. Not every record sounding powerful. It's more sounding clean or something. But
right,
yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I put a lot of that down to how good the players are, and also I just have a great producer that I work with, Andy Carpenter, who really has great ears, like you can't get away from that. Like at a certain point, people just decided studios didn't matter anymore because you could just buy Pro Tools. And it's like, well, you can't buy ears. So yeah, you can make a great record on Pro Tools, no problem. But, you need ears to do it.
Right.
It's just the existence of Pro Tools and editing software does not give you ears, So I hear a lot of records that sound weak, and people misdiagnose, and they think, oh, these guys should have gone to tape. It's like tape can make a big difference, and tape can be cool, but you need ears to run it correctly. You know what I mean? It's like, and at this point, with all of the effects and aftermarket stuff you can get, there's a pretty strong argument to be made that you don't really need tape or a lot of these things anymore if you have the ears,
Absolutely.
If you don't, then it's always a struggle.
Yeah, and if you're to tape, then you're going to have to worry about other things like actually playing really, really good,
Right.
Which, I mean, it didn't stop us before back in the old days when we played the tape too, but
Right.
We learned how to play to recording the tape. But that's the thing, is like you can make anything. You could really make any kind of record with technology these days. And if you just take a little time or have the right ears, like you're saying, really makes a huge difference.
I mean, I still, go in and sing shit live and keep trying to sing shit till it's good. But now I can do it secure in the knowledge that, Andy's real good at auto-tune and can do it in the graphic mode. And so it's like, cool, I got that right. That was the right phrasing. You tune it. You know what I mean? So it makes you lazier but you have to know your parameters. There's some shit that can't be tuned correctly, or that's never going to be good, or that you didn't get the phrasing of it right, but you can still get it through editing and tuning. So there's all these different things and ways to cheat, but somebody has to know how to cheat, and somebody has to know how you got what the basic fodder you needed. I think a lot of people think you can just cheat anything, and it's like, not exactly. You know what I mean? I can still tell, but it unless it's really good.
Know how to cheat the right way.
That's right.
I love
but that
it.
kind of stuff doesn't bother me, and that's why I don't get as bothered about AI. People are very concerned. People will get mad. I mean, we made a bunch of animated videos, and one of them this guy made was AI. Now, I'm so oblivious, I don't even know the difference. But, we throw up these videos online, and people are like, I love this, great song, I love this. The AI one is just like, fuck this, I hate this, fuck this, I hate this, fuck this, I hate this. And you're just like, look, man, I didn't make it, and I don't know how to make it. The song isn't made from AI. It's just this video. I thought it was funny. The guy did it.
Yeah.
Turned out, no, people don't want to see that. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, I guess we won't do that then,
The first argument I've heard with AI is hire an artist, and in this case, you hired somebody to do it. So it's like, what else can you do? You hire somebody, they make you a video. You're like, great, okay, I hired an artist to make me a video, and he made it, and here we are. But on the other hand, now I think the newer arguments for AI or against AI, I guess, would be the data centers, the water supply, the bills going up, or whatever that is. Maybe that's the new hatred.
All of which I agree with.
Yeah,
all of
absolutely.
Which I agree with. I mean, that's...
and then there's some people that say use AI so that it costs, the free AI, so that it costs the billionaires money. Because they're just like... They're not making as much money as they're spending on all this, so maybe that's a good way to sort of offset it. It's like, use it, but I don't know if that's actually a bad idea, because then it also uses the water, and it's just like, oh man, what's the right way to go? I
mean, this kind of reminds me of that flap. I don't know if you and I ever talked about this, but I know that we used to meet up at Punk in the Park. And then, they chased the Punk in the Park guy out of the the promoter business because he gave $250 to Trump. It's like, look, dude, I'm not a Trump supporter, but really, this is how we're going now. And It's like, okay. So when people start talking about AI, I mean, I feel the same way I felt about that. It's like, oh, okay, so I'm supposed to avoid this guy who did Punk in the Park because he gave $250 to Trump. How much money did Live Nation give to Trump? How much money did Clear Channel give to Trump? Yeah. How much money that all of these venues and people who run venues, how about, fucking, how about the Teamsters? How much money did they give to Trump? I mean, it's all just like, fuck, dude, what, where do I draw the line with this? And with AI, I kind of feel the same way. It's like, okay, we're drawing the line on this and saying that this is fucked. Meanwhile, these fossil fuel companies have been destroying our planet since long before you and I were born. It's like, but that's okay. I mean, what part of this is the part where we say, put down our foot and say enough is enough? I never know where that point is. You know what I mean? Because I just feel like the depth of people that are destroying things for money is vast.
There's always something to complain about. There's always corruption. There's always people ripping off other people, and I choose to, of course, be against that in general, but I just choose as part of the punk scene, the alternative scene, the rock scene, whatever you want to call it. It's a big tent, it's a little tent. I want people to find common ground in the fact that we're listening to music that's really meant to bring people together for a common good and positivity, and yes, to not ignore the problems we have in the world. But when people go to a show, especially these days, I feel like they go because they want to forget their problems. They want to forget that they've got bills piling up and that somebody's squawking in their ear about AI and all they're worried about is their job and wondering if they're going to have it, wondering if they can pay their bills, their kid's sick, whatever it is, right? Like real world problems. And so everybody's entitled to whatever they want to do artistically as a person that goes to shows, sure. But I'm always going to lean towards bringing people together under a bigger tent. And if you disagree with me, I don't care. You can go disagree with me. I don't care. Like, it's just, there's never been a time where people haven't complained about something that I've done with my band, in my life, whatever it is. It's never going to change. So let's not dwell on that. Let's dwell on what...
I mean, and I have these conversations with people, like, after something like this show, people will say to me, like, why don't you put some of this in your music? Like, you're a thoughtful person. Like, you talk about things, you understand things. Why don't you put some of that in your music? And I'm like, no.
Yeah,
I don't want it. Like, my music is about hedonism, death, sex, drugs. My music is very surface level and shallow, and I think there's a beauty and a sincerity to that. And even, like, it's funny because you talk about, like, these. Like, we just got back from Punk Rock Raduno, which is this great free festival that they do in the north of Italy. And the people there just couldn't have been nicer, and I just loved them so much, and I had so much fun there, and it was such a great show. And then also, it was free, so people from the community who didn't give a shit about punk and didn't know anything about it and were just there wandering around eating ice cream, you know what I mean? Like, I just thought it was such a great thing. And then I read this comment online where it's like, a guy from Dwarves is saying that he's a legend and they're the best band and everybody else sucks. It's like, I don't even think he understood where he was at, and it's like, oh no, dude, I understand it. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's two different things. I can appreciate solidarity in the scene and people talking about things, but then it's like, if you want my input, it's going to be this egotistical, sex-obsessed, destructive band. And if you can't understand that that's not me, that's just this band, and that we refuse to compromise and change it so that you can be happy and it's easier for you, then you're starting to understand me. You know, it's like I can talk one-on-one about politics. I'm not afraid of it. I find it interesting. But there's no place for that in my band. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like the closest we get, you were talking about Jenkem, I have that song Melania.
Okay.
But like Melania is a dwarf song because it's saying, you hate your husband, I'll fuck you.
Yeah, I was wondering about it.
You know
I was like, yeah, I can say, yeah. Is that
you know what I mean? Like,
Melania?
so it isn't a political message, although I have my thoughts about politics for sure. But it's like, no, this song is about something different. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of times I'm amazed by that. Like all I can equate it to is like, you know, people will go see Silence of the Lambs. They don't actually think Anthony Hopkins eats people. Mm-hmm. Like they understand that it's a role that he's playing. But when you go out with your rock group and you play, people don't really get that it's like a role that you're playing. You know, that like in the same way that I'm not as horrible a person as what I'm transmitting in this band, you know, Mike Herrera maybe is not quite as sweet a guy as you might think. You know what I mean? There's some other shit there. You know what I mean? It's like, it's very funny to me how people believe, you know, Bruce Springsteen. It's like this motherfucker, the working class hero of the world. He's been riding around in a limo for 60 years.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like, really, this is your working class hero, but people believe it. They have to believe it. That's what they want, you know? And it's like, they go to the movies and they know that Frankenstein is not real, but then they listen to the record and it's like, oh, Bob Dylan, he's talking right to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There was that comedian a while back that was like a redneck, and he had like this, oh, I'm going to hell for this. He was hilarious, but he was not at all a redneck. He was just like a normal comedian.
Was it Jeff Foxworthy? Or?
It was a guy that he went on tour with, for sure. It wasn't actually Jeff Foxworthy. It was the big guy. Something the plumber.
Larry the Cable Guy?
Larry the Cable Guy. Yes, that's exactly who I'm talking about. I'm sorry, it's been so long since I thought about Larry the Cable Guy. But he wasn't an actual cable guy. And people didn't really understand that, though.
Right.
Of course. Why would they? Because you don't necessarily even want to explain it, right? You know, you might have to explain it to like one person, but you're not necessarily wanting to explain that to your audience if you're at a show. You're not going to be like, all right, guys, just realize this is an act, okay? You're like, you're not going to do that, right? Like, you're just going to do your thing, and people are going to be like, the whole idea is people are kind of appalled or I don't know, compelled by it, right? And so, I don't know, this world, even this podcast sometimes, like, I feel like I explain too much. Like, I got to leave some things for the imagination, right?
Well, that's what we're the worst at now in this era of like full disclosure. Is, you know, leaving stuff to the imagination.
I mean, that's why I'm not gonna. That's why I try not to do too much research on people. It's not that kind of conversation for me. I almost like to discover, or just see where it goes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, we just got a deep.
You've seen where it went.
I like where it went. I don't often talk politics on the podcast anymore. I used to a lot more, but man, it's just because everything has gotten so political.
Yeah.
You can say one thing taken out of context so easily, this, that, and the fact that I'm not really thinking through a lot of the points that I make. I'm just off the cuff, willy-nilly a little bit, as we do when we're talking to friends and this. So, I mean, that's part of what's good about a podcast, I think.
I've been doing so much music too. Like I kind of got out of doing podcasts, writing books, or doing any of the side stuff I did because I made so many records over the last couple years. I mean, it's insane. There were all these Dwarves records. There was that Dwarves reissue, the Sunshine Lollipops thing. But then there were really 3 records in like a 4-year span. And on top of that reissue of the old or the stuff that had never come out, Sunshine Lollipops was like the alternate Blood Guts. So there was all that for the Dwarves, but then this Ralph Champagne thing, I got a whole record of that that's very loungy and has a lot of female vocal and stuff, very much like a 180 from the Dwarves, and that is coming out for Christmas.
Nice.
And then the craziest thing, I've been working with Mickey Avalon, the rapper from LA, and a guy named Z-Man, who's a great rapper from San Francisco. I've been making hooks, and then they've been rapping over them. And so,
nice.
I've got this kind of, now there's like 10 tracks sitting there, and, we're going to make a record, the Big Dick Hustlers.
Yeah.
And it's like, very like kind of Dr. Dre kind of tracks from the 2000s, like sort of that golden era of radio rap.
Yeah.
And dirty songs and stuff. So it's just, I haven't really been thinking about other things that are peripheral to music. Everything's just been music. So then I get on these interview things, and you can just kind of go anywhere.
Yeah. Dude, I just saw Mickey Avalon in Bremerton, and he was great. So I think it sounds like it's going to be a cool project.
Did he have the one-legged dancing girl with him?
She had two legs. She had. So I didn't see the one leg. That would have been fun.
That's either better or worse, depending on your taste, Mike.
True,
I don't know where you come down on the whole amputee.
I'll take it all. One's better than none, or maybe none's better than one. I don't know. I don't really know. I've never.
See, there's all these variations.
There's a lot of
legs, no legs, one leg, just the left, just the right. What are you feeling?
That's right. That's the great thing about life today is so many choices. Maybe it's
on the internet. There's somebody like, I only take right-legged girls, man. I'm not going to have a one-legged left-legger.
But it's still impossible to get a left-handed guitar or bass. Just like people are always like, give some love to the lefties, because I put out a bass recently and no left version. I'm sorry, lefties. I'm sorry. We'll figure it out eventually.
So you manufactured your own bass, or you just put your name on something through a company, or what was that?
Ernie Ball. I'm sponsored by Ernie Ball, and I have a signature series bass through them. StingRay.
Wow.
And so we did a factory version through Sterling. So it's a less expensive model, still great, has a volume knob, and I've been playing that with Goldfinger, just making sure that it's roadworthy. And I've played maybe like 4 or 5 shows so far on it, and it's been great. So.
See, I forget that you're a big rock star with deals and stuff. I stand in awe of all that stuff. It's funny, like we'll go in Greece, and we had a day off, and we went and saw The Offspring and Bad Religion,
Mm-hmm.
And like I show up, and there's 10,000 people there, and I'm like, oh fuck yeah, these guys are pretty big,
Yeah, yeah.
I forget that I know all these people that are like, what I mean? Because my band, it's always just like, oh, fucking Dwarves, a couple hundred people, no problem. If it's a festival, a couple thousand people, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I'm just not used to like, oh, wait a minute, the whole world knows these guys,
That's those viral hit songs, those pieces of songs that have just stacked up over the years and have billions of views basically with their song in it. You could, some of the big bands, like I would say Offspring, Green Day, Blink-182, maybe even like the Jimmy Eat Worlds and they have those little. They have like the middles, that song is pretty huge. So, it's such a hard. So what you guys are doing is you're actually putting out new music constantly. And so, it's a different road. You're not going to, you probably would even do better if you took your biggest song and only put that online, just clip.
Yes,
but it's not really what people want from you guys. It's
not what I got into music to do.
Exactly.
I got into it to make music and make something new, not to repeat something. But you're right. It's like there's gold in the middle of the road, and whatever you did that people like, you just constantly mine it. You know what I mean?
And that's what happens with those biggest punk bands is they have those those hit songs, and boom, it's just so big around the world and growing. I mean, since COVID, MXPX has grown for sure. So I know that all these other bands around us have grown. Everybody's just growing, and maybe it's partly internet, partly, you know, realizing what we almost could have never had before, you know, when the world shut down. Right. I don't know. It's maybe a combination of all these things, but yeah, everything's just gotten bigger. And you know, you always think, okay, you know, that blue dot thing, or is it red dot? I can't remember what color the thing is. You know, with Post Malone had to cancel his tour, and other artists have had to cancel their tour because they're not selling the arenas, you know. But with punk bands, I feel like I was talking to Charlie from Goldfinger the other day, and it was just like, man, back in the day, we would just go to the same venues over and over and over, and it would always be consistent. And I think, there's nothing to scoff at when you have a consistent audience, no matter what the size. Consistency is really important. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I feel very grateful that I'm at my age, can still go out, hang out, see my friends, play music, have people walk up to me and know some of my shit and appreciate it, you know. It's huge, you know.
Yeah.
But then when you take a step back, you kind of realize that people are consuming things in a way like, you know, I have 18 albums or something. Most people don't know what's on almost any of those albums. You know, they know the track that was on Punk-O-Rama, or the one track that was on a cassette that their buddy had, or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I get it, because some of my favorite tracks are from tracks like that, like from some comp back in the day. There was the band Bracket.
Yeah.
Everybody knows their 2-Rack Foo 5 song or whatever. I don't know how you say the song, but it's just like da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na. I know you don't know my name, but it was on a compilation back in the day, and it was just like, man, that song is so good. And we brought them out on tour, and that was the song consistently night after night that everybody knew, because that was sort of like the playlist of yesterday, right?
Yeah,
that's how people knew them. Anyway, hey, is there anything, before we wrap it up, is there anything that we missed that people got to know about? I know you're going on tour in September, right?
Yeah, we're doing West Coast with The Exploited. So, you know, hopefully we'll be sitting there when he has his final heart attack.
Oh no.
And when death comes to overtake him, we will be right there. I'll give him CPR. We'll be right there.
Please do. Sex and violence. Sex and violence. Yeah, that's...
man, you know, Ralph Champagne, Big Dick Hustlers, all my crazy shit. What can I say, Mike? You're a great man. I don't care what they're saying about you on the street.
I know. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for defending my honor everywhere around the world.
Always. Say, look, it's not his fault. He's from Seattle, man. You can't help stuff like that.
I know. I almost got into grunge. Almost. It happened. All right, everybody. Blag Dahlia. Go check out the Dwarves. See them on tour. You got to see them live, of course. You're in Europe. You're in the U.S. Do you guys go to Australia ever now and again?
We went there about a year and a half ago with Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. That was fun.
They're in Australia. It's been forever for us.
We go everywhere. We do everything. Give us your money.
Absolutely. You heard it here, folks. You heard it here. Let's go. All right, cool. Until next time, my friend. I appreciate it.
Cheers, Mike. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Love what you're doing.
Send me a link, buddy.
Will do.
Later.
Peace. All right, that's it. I want to thank my guest, Blag Dahlia, for being on. Jenkem is the new album, A Cheap Inhalant. Yes. Not sure I wanted to know what that really meant, but now I'll never be able to get it out of my mind. MXPX.com for all of the good stuff. We got hats, t-shirts, hoodies, vinyl, grill sets. We have Pokinatcha Punk dolls. They have t-shirts on them, but this one is naked. So All right. Until next time, shout out to Bob McKnight for producing. Shout out to Christine Hall for producing and editing videos. And I appreciate you guys both. All right. Peace.